Welcome back, everybody, to more from the Sableyes. I'm here today with Jordan. How are we doing, Jordan?
Not too bad, thank you.
That's good. We're back from Washington, D.C. We had a terrible tournament, but our special guest today didn't necessarily have a bad one. We're here today with world champion Henry Brand. How's it going, Henry?
Pretty goddamn good, Mitch. How are you guys going?
Oh, mate,
Very well.
pretty stoked to have you on. Must be a big couple of weeks for you, mate, to go from little old Melbourne to Pokemon World Champion. Must be pretty thrilling.
Yeah, it's surreal, man. It's surreal.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And the list that you did it with is up on screen at the moment. I had to trade like 25 codes to get my last Mew Mew just to make this video, but here it is. Perfection. And I think it's probably one of the most exciting lists that I've seen for a long time. And hey, at One World, you can't go wrong with it. I'll quickly run through the cards that we have, and then Jordan and I'll have some questions for you, Henry. So just sit tight. Obviously, we start off with 4 copies of Mewtwo and Mew with Perfection as the ability, where you can use the attacks of any Pokemon GX or EX on your bench or the discard pile, and because of that ability, you're able to run a whole bunch of super sick Pokemon. We've got Latios GX with Tag Purge for 120, stopping your opponent's tag team from attacking. We've got Meganadel GX with Venom Shot to do 170 snipe. We've got Reshizard to do a whole bunch of Reshizard things. Magcargo, which is really cool with Lava Flow and Burning Magma. We'll talk about that in a second. Cobalion GX with Iron Rule GX, which was the card that kind of was significant for you, Henry, the one that no one else really thought about, but you played. Solgaleo GX, Turbo Strike. There's so many. Espeon Deoxys for Cross Division and Psychic Club. And, of course, Jirachi GX with Psychic Zone to stop weakness. Wow, there's a ton of Pokemon there. That's quite an interesting setup you've got.
That sure is.
It's interesting.
So, for me, I think the cool one that we can start on is Cobalion GX. This is a card that no one really considered going into Worlds with your Mewtwo Mew boxes, and you're using it obviously just for Iron Rule GX because there's no Metal Energy, which means that your opponent can't attack. Now, this is something that Jordan and I never considered. What was it that drew you to this card when you were putting your list together?
Okay, so Cobalion GX, as soon as I saw the card be revealed in Team Up, or when I first saw the card, I said to my friends, that attack is inherently so good. Like, it is so good. And, what people didn't understand at the time is they say, it's bad now. How is it good now? Like, what is it good in? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Eventually, something could come along it's really good in. And here we go. So, Joao, when he made the original list, he had Cobalion in it. And I saw it and I'm like, yeah, that's good. So, if you'd like me to explain the uses of it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so when you're against Pikachu and Zekrom, often they can be really fast. And using Iron Rule to buy a turn or slow them down is really great. And also, just being able to get more energy into play for Iron Rule is really strong, or dig for extra custom catches, etc.
Beautiful. So it gives you that extra time to work on your board state or prevent your opponent from capitalizing on a strong start, which is pretty good. Jordan, we never considered that card. And another card that we kind of thought about a little bit was Magcargo GX. It's kind of got a twofold benefit to it. Lava Flow is a decent attack, and being able to discard any amount of basic energy to do a ton of damage is really, really strong. It's actually the attack that you declared, Henry, to win the tournament, which was really, really cool. But Burning Magma as well is super strong. Do you want to talk us through this one as well?
Sure. So Jordan will know I've been talking about Magcargo and Mewtwo for a long time now.
Yeah.
He was in my very first draft of the deck. Not that I did very much testing of it, but it was in there. Now, we had a big debate for the longest time, up until the night before of the tournament, of which card was better. And so we had a bunch of different attackers that we could choose from. So there was Magcargo GX, Reshizard GX, Dragonite GX, Blacephalon GX, and Blaziken GX. Now, Magcargo GX, it sort of does everything that all of those cards do, but in most cases it does them a little bit worse. So compared to Blaziken, it can still KO things for 3 energy, but it has to discard all of them. Again, compared to Dragonite, it does 30 more damage than Dragonite for 5 energy, but has to discard all the energy. Compared to Reshizard, it does more damage than Flare Strike, but has to discard the energy. all those similar things. And we went for Make Cargo because it was the best overall option, being able to KO Pika for 4 energy, being able to KO things for 3 energy, being able to actually get through Choice Helmet and the Dark type tag teams is really big. So that was a definite big reason for its inclusion.
It definitely seems like it's really useful having a Pokemon with an unlimited damage cap in this deck, especially since its GX attack can kind of be useful as well. Obviously, it's kind of your out to some games against Shedinja. If they've gotten a lock and they haven't used Latios GX attack, then you can still win with Makago, which is nice. But when we were testing it, we weren't really thinking about the regular attack as much as the GX attack because we were playing the Rainbow Energy build at first, and obviously your build playing all basic energy makes Makago such a stronger attacker compared to when we were testing it. And you don't really want to be using your GX attack when there's so many other good GX attacks in the deck. And one of the main GX attacks, I think, that a lot of people were kind of surprised about going into Worlds that didn't really see a lot of play until more recently was Espeon and Deoxys. Yeah. And that was mainly like a tech for, well, not so much a tech for Malamar, but it was definitely the swing card I feel like most people were using to beat the Malamar matchup. But when would you say you were using Espeon Deoxys for the most part in other matchups?
Well, I didn't actually use it that much. I think I announced the attack 3 times during the tournament. So the first time I used it was in the round 1. I used it twice. I played against Green's Blacephalon. And it is insane in that matchup. So you Turbo Strike the active Blacephalon, and then you Venom Shot the bench Blacephalon, and then you use Cross Divide GX to skip B-String.
Seems pretty good to me.
So that's insane. And then the only other time I used it, because I didn't play against any Malamar or any other setup decks, was in top 8. I believe I missed the tag purge, and what I did was I cross-divided. I KO'd Jirachi, then put 10 damage on Pika and 20 on Zorora, which meant that Pika was in range of Crushing Flow from Maycargo. Lava Flow from Maycargo. No, it was in range of Flare Strike, sorry.
Yes.
It was in range of Flare Strike, so 230, and then it was also in range of Zorora was in range of Venom Shot.
Yeah, that makes sense. The 170.
That was it. Yeah, we got there eventually. So that was the 230 and the 170. That was it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that card, a really, really strong one. I think it probably would have seen more action if you had have come up against a bunch of Malamar. Just whilst we're talking about the Malamar matchup, how do you approach that particular matchup? Obviously, weakness might be a problem, but like I know Jordan and I were both playing Power Plant in our Mally Tags lists for World Championships. So, how would you go about that particular matchup? Is it just focus down the cross division, or is there another secret kind of strategy that Henry has brewing in his brain?
I mean, it depends. If they only have 1 Ninkei or something, you can just use Venom Shot. But most of the time, what you want to do is if they'll usually put down Mew to prevent Venom Shot, you just want to go for the 6 energy cross divide. Not only is wiping their board of like their Pokemon relevant, but also just taking more than 1 prize in a single turn is really important in terms of the prize race. So that's really important. There are also some times where you're able to pivot your Mewtwo and Mew GX a few times, let them take a few hits, and then you can use Miraculous Duo GX to heal all of your Pokemon.
There's a couple of really, really good GX attacks for that particular matchup. Whilst we're looking across the board, most of the other GXs that we've looked at, Solgaleo, Naganadel, Latios, they've seen a bit of play in other Mewtwo Mew lists across the journey, so we won't go into too much detail about them just now. The big one, I think, where is it? What am I looking at? Yes, no, the big one for me, obviously your list is super, super consistent. You got 3 Dedenne in there. I don't think we ever got that high, Jordan, to 3 Dedenne.
No, I don't think so.
What was the thought process behind the 3 of them?
When we played the deck, we're like, okay, every single game we want to use 2 Dedenne. And my general rule of thumb is if you ever want to use X number of something, you play 1 more of it.
Yep, fair enough. X plus 1, so that's the 3 Dedenne. It makes a lot of sense.
Especially when it's a basic Pokemon that you can open with. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the really cool things, just whilst we move into the items, the fact that you're playing 3 Dedenne means that you can also play that copy of Electromagnetic Radar as well, which I think that's super, super cool.
Yeah, so originally in the list we had 2 Radar and 2 Dedenne. That became 3 Dedenne as soon as we realized how important it was. But the Electromagnetic Radar is really, really good because it's a consistency card. It discards cards from your hand, like your attackers and everything. And also, just having an extra out to Dedenne is so important because sure you have 4 Cherish Ball, but you'd rather use your Cherish Ball on something else. So if you have a Cherish Ball in your hand and a Radar, then you can get your attacker and discard it at the same time. That's really good.
It means that you've got so many other ways to discard your Pokemon. I know when we were testing early doors, like you want to, okay, we're going to Cherish Ball for something and then discard it with Hearth, and then, oh, hang on a minute, I don't have any other ways to get rid of stuff. With the EMAG Radar, not only can you discard the Pokemon with the Radar itself, but you're searching out the Dene, so you can just burn them with the Dene anyway. Which seems very, very strong. So I'll just run through the item line very quickly. And
before you do, Mitch,
Oh,
this is actually a perfect segue to talk about the Marshadow with Resetting Hole, because not only is that obviously a Pokemon, but it's also something interesting to talk about the fact that Henry only played 3 Mysterious Treasure, and obviously 3 is still a decent number, but was that ever a fork out? Or like, were you ever worried about not being able to hit the reset hole at the right time due to only having 3 treasure, or was the list running well enough that you didn't have to worry too much about that?
I felt that I didn't need to use the treasure too often, and the 3 seemed like the right number. I never really felt like, oh gee, I wish I had a 4th, because it's not actually... It doesn't search out anything like a Lele like you used to be able to, so
yeah.
I felt like 3 was fine. Marshadow actually made its way into the deck list later on in the week. We originally didn't have it in there. Then we just wanted a bit extra insurance. Like, we didn't want to lose to people playing Power Plant and Malamar. Like, we didn't want it stuck in there. Things like that. And obviously it's just a good Pokemon in general, but the 3 treasure felt fine.
And we actually got to see you attack with Red Knuckles in the finals, which was really cool to see. It's obviously an attack that's seen a bit of play over the years when Zap Beast or other Beast decks were pretty big, but in this format I was never expecting it to have like a huge impact, but you really showed how it's worth in the finals, where you're able to kind of take advantage of Nagato's weakness, and the Reshizard on your bench also meant that you weren't forced to put the Jirachi GX down, otherwise you would have blocked their weakness.
So I think you're remembering I told you about that. That was the whole the line of play was I go into Reshizard after the Mewtwo has died, so that my next Mewtwo will not die to a turning point in Ganondorf, and then I don't have to put Jirachi down to remove the weakness of the Ganondorf, meaning I can't kill it with Red Knuckles.
So there's some World Championship level plays right there.
Dude, that's way beyond anything that I was considering. But hey, Marshadow is super, super cool. A good inclusion. I'll run through the trainer cards here, and then we can talk about a couple of the interesting counts. We've got 4 copies of Acrobike, 4 Cherish Ball, 4 Custom Catcher. We've got that 1 EMAG Radar. We've got 1 Fire Crystal, 3 Mysterious Treasure, 4 Pokegear, 2 Switch, 3 Hearth, 1 Forest, 2 Bills, and 4 Welder. One thing that I want to ask you is, was there ever a point in building the list where you had more than 6 supporters? Because that seems like a really low number. Surely you would have started with a little bit more.
No, honestly, we didn't. The original list that we started with at the start of the week had 2 coach trainer instead of 2 bills. It never really went above. Some of us tested 3 bills at some time so that you hit them more often off Pokegear, but my logic to everyone that I kept saying is that it doesn't matter if you miss Pokegear. You have to look at Pokegear as a welder rather than as a bills. And like, if you can play more welder, even if they're like 30% chance to be a welder, 100% you would play more welder.
Oh yeah,
so,
that's 100% where kind of our line of thinking was with the list as well. I remember like Jordan and I were having a conversation about how if we could play 8 welder with this list, we probably would, because it's the only supporter that ever really matters. Because of that constraint, did you ever consider things like Palpad or even that like basic Mewtwo that puts a supporter back on top of your deck? Did you consider any of those cards?
Yeah, so we tested Palpad a little bit. It was okay, but again, it was a spot at the end of the day that we felt we didn't need consistency-wise. Like, obviously the deck is so consistent and more is never bad, but we felt we sort of were at a sweet spot that we needed to start working on other aspects of the deck. The Mewtwo was something that I was a big fan of, the one that puts a supporter on the top. But the issue with that is that we actually really did all the maths and everything on this deck to make sure that we didn't have too many bad openers, and that was why we didn't want to play the Reshiram Charizard in the first place, but we ended up having to protect the Gardevoir. The more bad openers you have, the less chance you have of a Turbo Strike on turn 1, or etc. So
yeah, the Mewtwo is actually a card that we were playing around with a little bit, and we also came to the conclusion that like it was pretty strong, but in the end didn't seem like it was worth playing. But it really doesn't seem like you needed this list, because just looking at the item line where it's pretty much all just 4 of the 4 Acrobike and 4 Pokegear is definitely the thing that stands out to me, because I know in a lot of our testing we were kind of debating like which one's better. Do we play Acrobike or Pokegear? And
Yep.
you obviously had the genius of idea of, hey, why not just play both?
Exactly. Yep. Consistency is good.
Certainly
Sure
is.
is.
And talking about consistency, we've got lots of consistency to find energy in this list. You've got 3 Hearth and 1 Viridian. The thing that is kind of separating this Mewtwo list or Mew Mew list as opposed to some of the other ones that we saw going in is the fact that it only has Psychic and Fire energy. So Viridian Forest and Hearth are both super good. At what point did you swap from like a rainbow or a multi-energy build into the straight psychic one, or was it just always, hey, the only attackers we're ever interested in declaring have psychic and fire energy, so let's just go with those?
Yeah. So the other list that you would see played Rainbow, and they'd play Greninja GX, both of them often, and they would play Altaria GX. Now, I think Altaria is like really bad in Mewtwo. I think Bright Tone is largely irrelevant. Like, it can be okay against Pika in some situations, but most of the time you'd rather be doing more damage and applying more pressure. Now, as for the other downsides, the Greninja GXs are both very good attackers, but the 10 damage from Rainbow is so relevant in so many matchups, especially against, as Jordan was saying, Power Plant Malamar. They'll be able to hit you for 260, and if you have Rainbow damage, you're knocked out. The other big thing as well is that you cannot use Turbo Strike to attach Rainbows from the discard, whereas you can use it to attach Psychic.
Yeah,
That's a pretty major
big
factor,
deal.
and one of the main things that I noticed from your list compared to other lists I've seen is that you're only playing 3 Psychic Energy as opposed to 4, and of course you've gone with the 3 Hearth and 1 Viridian split as well. So I was just wondering, did you ever feel like that was a little too low, or did you find it was pretty much pretty easy to find the Psychics when you needed to?
It felt fine. It sometimes made it a little bit difficult to use Mewtwo's GX attack, but honestly it wasn't. Like, you go through so much of your deck so fast with like 3 Dedenne and 2 Acrobike and your Welder, and you're taking all of these Pokemon out of the deck, you're taking Fire Energy out of the deck, like you thin it a lot, so it's relatively easy to hit the Psychic Energy.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I've played the list a few times over the last day and a half since I've been home, and that is something that I've noticed a lot, is that it kind of speeds through the deck quite a lot. Obviously, you're a very high quality player, Henry, but was there ever any points in the tournament where you were kind of like, oh geez, I'm actually like pretty close to decking myself out here?
No, I don't think there was. Funnily enough, today actually I had a few scenarios where I did, but it's honestly more those slower paced matchups like Malamar where you probably have to be a little bit more conservative. But everything else, like you're taking so many prizes so quickly, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, for sure.
Watching you play this deck, it definitely seems like you're very turbo with this deck. You're going all in and applying a whole bunch of pressure and taking a whole lot of prizes early, whereas a lot of other people, when they think of Mewtwo, they're thinking of it as more like a toolbox deck where you've got a whole bunch of different controlling options, such as the Altaria you were mentioning earlier. But this build is just so much more aggressive, so you can go through your deck, but you can also just like still have those controlling options, such as Tag Purge, to slow down when you need to. And that's actually one of the things that we haven't really talked too much about in Custom Catcher in this deck, where Custom Catcher actually has, I'd say, 2 pretty decent uses in this deck, because obviously the single effect for Custom Catcher can actually be pretty useful for draw in a deck like this where you want to turbo a whole bunch, but just the strength of Custom Catcher itself is obviously worth playing just because it'll swing a whole bunch of matchups if you get it at the right time.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, the Custom Catcher is really, really important to the deck. It lets you prize map really well, especially with Bill's analysis. You're able to find the catches when you need them. You're able to use them to draw and have consistency, and I definitely got out of a tough spot using them. But just being able to prize map and do something like Tag Purge into double Custom Catcher, make cargo, just lots of things like that, they're really good.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of cool plays that you can make. That's the list. We'll leave it up on the screen so that if you want to snipe it, you can grab it from here. But now we'll just have a chat about the tournament itself. So before like the tournament started up, when you're maybe a few days out, was there ever a point where you were like, oh nah, Mew's not going to work, or was this always the list that you were kind of working towards getting to play?
So when the set first came out and like I was testing early on or looking at all these decks, I honestly didn't like any of them. Like, everything felt sort of inconsistent. Everything felt like not my style.
Yeah,
nothing like.
I get behind that, mate. That's exactly how I felt as well.
just overly simplistic or just inconsistent, everything like that. And so obviously I looked at Mewtwo and Mew as a deck, and I really wanted it to be good, but I hadn't put too much testing into it. I'd had some thoughts about it, but and I even joked with one of my friends, he's like, "What are you gonna play for Worlds or everything?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna win the Worlds with Mewtwo and Mew, and then I'll play the same deck at the Melbourne Esports Open, but with counters to Mewtwo." So we'll see.
So that's the hot scoop. That's the hot scoop, guys. If you go onto the Esport Open, you got to be ready for Henry because he's countering his own deck.
Well, and then about a week out, when I got to Washington and I stayed with Bert, Stefan, and Joao, we tested a lot. And Joao came with this list. He said, "This is pretty good. Let's test it. See how we go." We refined it, figured out the issues with it, which is like, this is insane. Deck's so good. There we go. We just ironed everything out and good to go.
Beautiful. Jordan, have you got any questions that you've prepared for Henry? I'm sure you do.
I have, actually. It's very exciting to talk to Henry.
Grabs out the notepad.
I feel like you kind of segued into a pretty decent question when you mentioned the Melbourne Esports Open. Obviously saying that the play might be a deck that counts as Mewtwo, but if someone was looking at playing Mewtwo for the Esports Open, do you think you would? Do you reckon that there's any changes you would have either made for the World Championships, or if not for Worlds, then anything you would change moving forward in a post-Worlds meta?
That's a good question. I think the only two decks this deck loses to is well, personally, we decided to lose to Keldeo. We just said, all right, we're losing to Keldeo. Now, if you expect it or you're worried about it, you can easily tech for that matchup. Something like a Turtonator might work, or, even, like, you could play, like, one basic water and a Greninja, but, I mean, like, you just have to test how the techs work. Turtonator probably works okay. Then, if you were looking at playing it, I would 100% get a whole lot of practice in with the deck, because it is not like other decks where, in this matchup I'm going to do this, and in this match I'm going to do this. No, like, every single game will be different with the deck. You'll have to understand what attack is best for which opportunity. Do I tag Purge? Do I Turbo Strike to get energy on board? What's my prize mapping? What is in the prize cards, etc. So.
And when you were preparing for Worlds, obviously you were mentioning there were quite a few cards that you were considering instead of the Makago, such as the Dragonite. Are there any of those cards that you kind of wish that you were able to include that you think might have been, in hindsight, worth playing? And how like close to the event was it until you'd finally locked in your final 60 cards?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any attackers that I'd specifically want in the deck. We sort of have everything at the moment. Dragonite is nice, but it feels like a little bit extra, I would say. Like, it's very nice instead of Makago in some situations so that you don't use as much energy and you threaten a one-shot the next turn. But most situations you can probably win anyway. Other than that, like, the only changes that I consider to the deck, and I'd say what is optimal, is swapping Fire Crystal for Energy Recycle System. It's just a bit safer and you're able to use it. It's the same logic as Giant Hearth. Like, if you don't have Welder in hand, but you have one, you can play it, and then it's still usable if you draw into the Welder afterwards. So.
Obviously, that also allows you to get your Psychic Energies back, which is a pretty good resource. You're not always able to use Turbo Strike. Sometimes it's prize, and sometimes you just don't have the time to use it. So getting those Psychics back seems like it'd be pretty clutch as well.
Yeah, I would also consider testing for Giant Hearth as opposed to one Viridian Forest. It feels very good to use Viridian later on to get the Psychic, or if you need it, turn one for the Psychic. But otherwise, in most situations, you wish it was a Giant Hearth. Yeah,
that makes sense. Also, of course, I guess the other good benefit to having two different stadiums is that you can potentially replace your own stadium in a mirror match, or maybe use two stadiums to get triple fire energy in one turn.
Yeah.
That you can kind of do that with Reset Whole Marshadow anyway, so I suppose it's not too big a deal.
Whilst we're talking about the lead up to Worlds, obviously you're walking around the floor on day one, you're seeing all the weird, wonderful stuff that people were pulling out to try and get into their own day two. Was there any decks that you saw that were coming through and you're like, oh geez, that might actually be something that I wasn't considering, something that might beat me? Or were you pretty comfortable, okay, I know, apart from Keldeo, I'm pretty much going to be fine against all of this other stuff?
Yeah, there were three. So Keldeo, Gardevoir, and Limitless's ability Reshizard deck. So ability Reshizard we were a bit scared of because it seemed like in theory it would beat us. So we were worried about that. We were also worried about Keldeo, but we chose not to take for it because we thought, okay, we're going into day 2. Everyone's seen the Keldeo. Either no one's going to play it or everyone's going to tech for it. And so we're like, sort of like the whole like game theory thing, like, all right, well, everyone else is going to do it, so we won't do it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it paid off for us. Against Gardevoir, we put in the Reshisard because we figured that all of the Japanese players would stick to Gardevoir, a lot of them. So we put in a counter, and that makes the matchup 50-50, if not favored. So that was good. And then the Limitless deck, we're just like, whatever, we've been testing this deck for so long. It's fast, it's consistent, let's just play it.
Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
and it seems like that matchup isn't too bad for you anyway. Like, obviously,
No.
it's going to be pretty close because they have non-GX attackers that can one-hit, but overall, your deck's just so fast and powerful that I feel like you can go pretty evenly against it anyway. So,
Yeah.
so you made it through it to day 2, obviously, with a day 2 invite, and you saw the field in day 1. It looked pretty favorable for your deck, so you ended up piloting it all the way to the finals, which is just crazy. Just saying it is just so amazing.
Yep.
So you made it to the finals. You saw that you were versing Shintaro's Blacephalon deck. How did you prepare for the finals on that night?
So we built Shintaro's deck from stream. We actually ended up getting 60 card, as I'm sure he did mine. And originally, I was a bit worried about the matchup. So I thought, okay, in theory, this is rough. And then we tested it, and we felt that his deck was fairly bricky, especially early on while it had struggled to set up its draw engine with Naganadel. So rather than try and skip B-String with Cross Divide, I said to everyone, I think that's not going to work. I think we just need to try and go hard, go fast, turn 1 KO with Mag Cargo or Double Blaze, and then see what happens from there, and force him to hit into those B-Strings, especially because he only played 3.
Yeah, and that's... oh, sorry, Jordan, you go.
I was just going to say, we actually saw... I think it was game 2 that he... no, I can't remember which game it was.
One, he dropped 3 B-String.
Yeah,
Game 1, yep.
The triple B-String off of a dead hand, as you predicted, and placed the triple B-String down. How did you feel in that moment when he just dropped 3 down?
I had a read on his hand, so I'm like, his hand either has 2 B-String, or... Because you can never assume 3, right? That's unrealistic.
Exactly.
You can assume 2, or I assume that he prized this to Dene, because he played a Cherish Ball for a Blacephalon beforehand. Now, I'm like, okay, look, unless his hand is like triple B-String, and he top decks something, or he has 2 and then top decks something, like this is fine. Unless he has, there's a bunch of things that could have happened, but I'm like, most of the time, this is the correct call. I took the 2 prizes on his Blacephalon, and then he top decked Custom Catcher, actually. And so he played 3 B-String, then Custom Catcher, and drew more cards, everything into the Heatran with 6 energy. And even when that happened, I felt like I was fine because I had the return KO. So.
Yeah, sitting there in the crowd watching that happen, I'm like, oh, like he's literally just sitting there with absolutely nothing, and then suddenly, bang, there's all this energy on the field, and he's got the knockout. Yep. But like you said, once that's happened, and he takes a knockout on you, you just return, and there's nothing that he could really do in that situation. I'm sure you must have been feeling pretty confident that, hey, I can run this game out here, considering he's already used all of his B-Strings.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously it was a little bit spooky, but it was fine. Before the game ended, obviously with the penalty and everything, we won't touch on that. But even in that turn, he only had a 30% chance to win that game, so I was definitely favoured.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's the key, is that you always kind of looked like you were going to win that game. He would have had to completely sack off whatever cards he was drawing to try and get there. So it was still looking pretty good. And then going into game 2, you got that really quick start again. At what point did you kind of go, hey, this could be happening here? Like I could be winning this game.
As soon as he didn't get a return KO after I knocked him out. As soon as that happens, it's over, because he has 2 options at that point. If he misses the KO, he has to either leave a non-GX active, right, or he has to bursting burn me or something. And either one that he does, if he leaves a non-GX active, if he leaves a GX active and bursting burns me, I just take a KO and I get out of B-String. Now, if he leaves a non-GX active, similar to what I actually did, is that I can just knock it out with resetting Whole Marshadow.
Fantastic. Sorry, my Pokemon online has just carked it on me because I've been sitting there for 30 minutes doing nothing. But that's all right. I'll just get the deck back up.
No problem. I'll ask a question.
Yeah, go for it, Jordan.
You get that back up.
We're back on. We're back on. Everything's fine. No one saw anything.
Yep.
So yeah, obviously, in game two, after the penalty, we actually saw Shintaro like pick up in pace like significantly. Did you feel like there was ever a chance that like he was going to get punished for either playing too fast and like accidentally misplaying, or were you not really too worried about that?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, he was a bit rattled after what had happened, but I think, I mean, Shintaro is a very seasoned and a very good player. I think he wouldn't really let that affect him that much.
Yeah.
So the game's pretty much wrapping up, and like Shintaro's looking through his list, he's looking through his cards, and he's trying to figure out a way to get back into the game. You've got 2 prizes left. He passes into your turn, or whatever happened at the end of that. I believe my burst GX or whatever he did. You're sitting there. You've got game in hand, or you've pretty much got game in hand. What does that feel like in that moment where you've got like, okay, I've got like these 3 actions to do, and then as long as I do them correctly, I'm world champion. How does that feel?
It was so nerve-wracking. Like, I'm like, okay, I have everything to win. I'm pretty sure, right? I win, right? I win. And then I just need to, like, double-check everything. And, I cherish ball to make sure there's an energy in my deck. I play the Hearth. I discard the Made Cargo. I attach KO. Unreal.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Like, we saw you, like, the hands were shaking and everything was going crazy. I could never imagine being in that situation, to know that there was so much on the line, and all I have to do is just not stuff up my promotion.
I know that like the turn before that happened, Mitch, we were watching the game and we're like, oh, there's no way Henry's losing from here. We like got up from where we were sitting, went right up to the front. We're like, Henry's got this in the bag. We were so confident at that point as soon as he missed that knockout right at the beginning of the game.
But yeah, no, it was something else watching from the stands. But tell us, like, what from that point, like you declare the attack, you win. What's going through your head? Like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, I watched the video today, and the first thing that you actually did after declaring the attack was go to pick up your cards. It's like, oh, I'm packing up here. Like, it's the end of a game. Like, what do you do in that moment?
I mean, I didn't know what to do. How does anyone know what to do? Like, I've never been in that situation. They don't teach you what to do. Like, I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to just leave everything on the table. I'm gonna pack it all up, right? Get it ready.
That's what you usually do.
Yeah, tell me what.
And then, just like it's any other game, pack up your cards and then get to the next thing. So
yeah, it's funny watching the video back. Like, the commentators are going, "Oh, and Henry's the world champion," and the crowd's cheering, and you're sitting there being like, "Oh, I got to make sure that all my cards go into my deck." Like,
I mean, honestly, I needed a moment to compose myself and just sort of think through what's going on, because I mean, it took a long time until it really actually sunk in. Even well after that, like I've just won the world championships.
Yeah, and that's it's so crazy, and to think that an Australian won world championships is for me, it's so surreal. Like I've played against you multiple times, Henry. Like, we played in Sydney regionals, like.
Yep.
And you're the world champion of Pokemon. Congratulations! Like, it's a massive deal.
Yeah.
So crazy. Henry ended both of us in top 8 of the regional championship this year. So it's good to see that we're losing to the best of the best, right?
Well, now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah.
No, but it's really, really cool. Okay, so you're the world champion now. You're going into the next season, like literally a week and a half after you get back from Washington DC, is the first big event of the Australian season. Yep. What's the thought process? We going for day 2 again? Like, we're going back to back world championships? Where are we at? Like, what's the plan?
I mean, to be honest, before this world championships, I don't know if I told you guys this, but I actually was planning to take another break. Maybe not quit completely, but definitely take it on the back burner. I was a bit burnt out, wasn't enjoying it as much, wasn't as interesting. Just like, take a break, look into some other stuff. But then here we are, and I think changed my mind on that one.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of reasons as to why you should stick around.
Yeah, and I mean, this I had a bit of a couple disappointing performances in the NAIC and the EUIC, and this sort of reaffirmed that no, I can do this. It's all right.
You can kick it with the best.
Yeah, and so now going into next season, I may try and go for day 2 again. Last season I only played half the season, so I'm interested to see what happens this year. And now we've got only less than 2 weeks until the esports open.
Yeah, so kicking off
if
again.
This is what happens when you only play for half a season. I'm afraid to see what happens when Henry plays for an entire season.
He plays for the entire year. It's like, oh yeah, no, just kicked around for 6 months. I decided to come in late in the year, and I just casually won world championships. Whatever. It's not a big deal. But hey, thanks so much, Henry, for coming along and talking through your list with us and your experiences. I don't want to keep you too long, like we've been going for 35 minutes. Jordan and I will probably go through the list again and do some matchup stuff. But hey, thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for winning, man. I get to say that I live in the same country as the world champion.
It's all good, guys. Thank you for your support, and thanks to everyone else from Australia.
Do you want to do any plugs before we go? Obviously your Twitter's kicking off. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, so come check out my Twitter. It's at BenryBrand. Then my Twitch, which is at Benry_TCG. I'm going to be streaming a bit more. I'm going to start looking into doing all of that, I guess, more pro Pokemon player sort of stuff. So if you're interested in coaching or watching my streams, go check it out.
Beautiful. I know that I'm going to be I've drafted my little email up to get some coaching from the world champion. Sounds pretty good to me. Thanks for coming on, mate. And we wish you all the best for the season coming up. Unless, of course, you're playing us, in which case we hope you lose horribly.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jordan, for coming along for this interview. I know you've been excited for this one since we got back.
Oh, for sure. It's a pleasure.
And thanks everyone for watching. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing by clicking the sable eye in the middle of the screen right now. On the left hand side we have some videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, and on the right we have a playlist of some description. I don't know what it is because we've only just got back from America. Thanks for everyone being patient with us over the last 10 days whilst we've got no content coming out, but hey, we were at Worlds watching Henry win, so we can't do everything. We'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. And yeah, good luck for season 2020, everyone. We'll catch you later. Bye.